So here's a great vacant lot on Troop, like troops, like in the military, TROOPS, troops. This is Troop. I used to live on it, and that was where I lived. And I lived in the downstairs unit. And my landlord, Mark and Patsy, very good people. One in advertising, the other is a photographer. And like I said before, Patsy could have brought Mark work in the studio by doing photography for her still pieces, not her video photography. And she needs cameramen in that. Mark specializes in black and white and still photography. And he specializes in pregnant women. Mark specializes in taking images of pregnant women. And Patsy is in agricultural advertising. So Mark, pregnant women. So there's pregnant cows and pregnant, truly. And then plants, you would say the seeds are their pregnancy. And so they reach a point of blooming, and then they put these seeds off, and the seeds start new seedlings and so on. It's like pregnancy per se. But Mark specializes in pregnant women, and pregnant women with, their dogs, and pregnant women. And he likes to do a lot of black and white, and he's exceptional. But Patsy could have brought him into her agricultural advertising, truly. And it was more that Patsy would be the giver to Mark, and then Mark, through his photography, he was outstanding, would give back to Patsy by showing that she employed excellence, and the campaigns worked because Mark was so good at his trade that her advertising campaigns would have been more successful. And by the advertising campaigns being more successful, Mark gives back through his exceptionalism, and Patsy is now more renowned as this agricultural marketer. So, and I don't know what the guy did on the first floor. I never really interacted with him. He was nice in that, but never really interacted. And the girl that took over downstairs was worked for Mark in his studio. I forget her name. But there's an empty lot right there, and Mark could buy it. And then next door, I never had problems with these people, but I guess, anyways, but they were Latino, and I forget what business they were in, but it was a Latin family. I never had one problem with them. And then, obviously, down here is just more commercial. So you got a couple residential, and then the rest of this is commercial. This used to be a boat company, truly, watercraft company, engineers or something like that. And then this used to be a boat yard. Now it's some kind of outdoor entertainment, and it's kind of cool with the lights and whatever. But then this is the kayaking. And my friend John Zeef, who I just talked to tonight, he's huge into the kayaking and this stuff. He's a granola. He's using the skiing, kayaking, all that stuff. So you can do winter. They have to have wetsuits in that. Truly wetsuits, and then you have a helmet, and the helmet has to be heated. But now there's, I think, heated wetsuits and heated helmets in that. And then they can wear goggles. Truly, wear goggles, and that covers up the eyes. And then the goggles can have, the helmets can have earmuffs and that. And then you wear Darth Vader around your face, which is, Darth Vaders are like scuba suits, but they have little holes you breathe in and out. So you wear a Darth Vader, and it's waterproof. And so keeping your head warm, and you have the helmet, and then you have the gloves. Truly, the gloves, and then the wet things for your feet. And so you're not too heavy. Everything needs to be super light. You want to create buoyancy. You don't want them to drown. So if you understand boats, getting boats to be super light using like nanotube, these highly strong and lighter, even bigger boats, they need to be lighter. as you put more cargo containers on, the boats themselves, the wiring and everything else has to get lighter. And that's why I talk about composites and all that, and figuring out how to make everything lighter. So then you can put more cargo containers and the boat has more buoyancy. And the submarine, they bring on ballast, seawater, to sink itself. But you want the sub to have more buoyancy. You want it to be lighter. Even the nuclear missiles or whatever, those things have to be ultra light. Truly, they can't be bulky and heavy. And so this way, it glides through the water and it has easy buoyancy. And so it just takes on some more seawater to lower itself, and then it raises itself, or it can do it through hot water. They heat the water and it expands into a gas, and then cool the water and it turns into a liquid and the boat rises. So it can have just self-sufficient, so it doesn't have to open any doors, and it heats the water, turns it into steam, truly, and then it rises, and then it cools the water, it turns it into a liquid, it condenses, and it sinks. So they can create buoyancy by just changing phasing. Now the tube would have to open a pressure door, right? You're expanding and you can only take so much pressure, then it'll have to go into another thing. When you cool it down, it has to be in a smaller container. You're condensing it, right? So there's ways to raise and lower things, creating buoyancy in that. And this is the same in ships. They need to create more buoyancy. They turn it into steam, and the steam is lighter than water. It's a gas, and it raises the boat. And so you're creating a hydraulic system for a boat. And so you can raise and lower tankers. Raise and lower. And when they come in, they need to raise them up a certain height for unloading. And maybe they need to lower them to make them more stable in high seas. Because if you understand, to create stability, an aircraft carrier has more decks below the surface than above the surface. But you don't want to make the aircraft carrier heavier. You just want to be able to create hydraulics, basically, and be able to lower it under the water when you need to. And then when there isn't that much current, you want to raise the aircraft carrier because it doesn't need the stability. So it needs to be able to lower itself, deepen itself in the water, literally coming, even with the water surface, and be able to move with the waves. But if it lowers itself, then it can't tip. It can't tip. So a cargo ship has to be able to sink itself to create more stability. Now, they can also put a center dorsal fin or two fins in the front and the back. Two fins. Now, they have that little ball that cuts through the water, but you can put 4 fins on a container ship, 2 in front, 2 in back, and they go on a 45-degree angle. So they glide through the water, but they also create more stability. And if they need to, the fins are electronic and they can turn more vertical. So the outside fins, one front, I would say front, center, and rear, 6 fins. And you can change the angle of the fins. And so to create more or less drag, and then the fins can shrink. So they're a chamber and they fit with inside each other. So when high seas and it's going smooth, you shrink the fin and it's just a little dorsal fin sticking out. And so it creates stability. So again, you don't need to make them heavier, you need to make them lighter, the planes and everything. This way, they can choose to have more or less buoyancy. And so that means you get more lift. Have you ever thrown a paper airplane? It has great lift, right? You design and you throw it, I used to, or a kite. Great lift because it's so light. So you get lighter materials, lessening the load, and then they work with luggage companies who get better material that lightens it, like Kevlar or something, so they can handle the weight, but they're lighter. So the containers for luggage. And then they can make luggage containers basically, explosive proof. So they can require you to have certain types of luggage, and the TSA can check and say this luggage doesn't meet the standards. And the bag itself has to be explosive resistant. Truly, explosive resistant. The bag itself has to be explosive resistant. Even the check-on bags have to be explosive resistant. And so the luggage companies get new standards that are implemented, and that makes it for safer buses and trains that the bag itself is a explosive container. My backpack, it's made of Kevlar. It's explosive resistant. It is. It's explosive resistant. My backpack. I bought it from Tumi. Now, it's made to last a long time, but it's also bulletproof and explosive resistant. Yes, my backpack was bulletproof. And then I had bag stuff in the backpack, so to even make it more bulletproof. So you couldn't stab me from behind because I had stuff in my backpack, like my computer. And you're not going to put a knife through my computer. So this is what they don't do in the military. Those little cloth things, they wear those packs. They don't add to their protection. Everything should add to their protection, even their backpacks. So they're wearing their satchels, the lug out, the one thing they put in, same thing. It adds to their protection, their clothing. It adds to the just like, think about flight attendants. If their stuff is cut resistant, and they wear those little neck scarves, and those neck scarves are cut resistant, and they could be cut and bullet resistant. But think how much braver flight attendants would be. 9/11, if they knew that, the box cutters, and they knew a little self-defense, and their stuff was cut resistant in that, then they wouldn't have been so afraid of guys carrying a box cutter. Because I know I can take you on, and they can have gloves, and you can make them elegant gloves, and they look good and everything, but the gloves, bullet and cut resistant, and they look elegant, and they wear the gloves, and so on and so forth. And now you have transparency, so you can see the nails in that, and it looks like they're for sanitary reasons and everything, but they're really for protection. So again, cut resistant. And so you can make it where they have a competitive advantage, and the passengers can't. Surely, the passengers can't. So there are certain things, they scan their clothes in that, and the passengers can't have things that are for self-defense. Truly, they're not allowed on the plane with certain things for things. Now, you have to worry about crashes and everything, and there's other protections they can do, like inflatable airbags and other things you can do to protect the passengers. But they can't come on with, this high technology stuff. Truly, they can put it in their bag that goes in, they can put it in their bag that goes in the cargo hole that's impossible to access because it's sealed. And so I'm telling my friend about zip ties and tamper-proof tape, but everything has to be locked. They have their own lock, and you put another lock on top of their lock. So you seal it. And just like the stuff going into overhead, it gets sealed. So they can carry it on, but all that stuff is locked down. And so they have to take out and they can store it in the pocket in front of them. So you tell them whatever you're going to do once the flight, because structural integrity of the flight The plane moves more if those doors open and close and pressure changes. So no, they lock down and you can't get them until landing. And so if you need an inhaler or anything else like that, put it in the pocket in front of you. You have to take it out. So again, they can lock everything down. So again, it can be unbelievably safe. Beyond imagine, impossible that safe. And just like our immigration system, if we have borders and the police are doing everything they're supposed to be doing, then everything is safe. Because if you're watching on taxes and that, people are using their money, and then if credit card companies are watching and banks are watching cash flow, because if people are purchasing things, money has to go places. And that's why I gave recording the numbers on the bills. And so the bills in circulation and that flags purchased a lot of fertilizer and a lot of diesel. They didn't have any crops. There wasn't any sale of crops from that fertilizer. There wasn't any movement of tractors. They weren't burning the diesel. You can monitor the fields by satellite. You can monitor the fields by satellite. And so people are buying fertilizer. The fields can be the monitors through satellite. They'll know the nitrogen level and everything else, and they're using infrared, and they can measure the burning of fuel or how much battery is using by doing thermal imaging. So they can monitor the activity on any farm. On any farm. So there's no Oklahoma City anymore. So all of it was to create movement for me where I can move around in perfect freedom. And I gave many other systems. But number one is the people. I gave all that background and all that stuff and all that tracking and all that stuff, who's doing what and so on. I talked about the Nation of Islam and so on, and watching radicalization. But radicalizing, I'm not a radical. I love God. I'm radically in love with God. Absolutely, beyond any question. All my heart, all my life, you name it. But the whole point is, I understand this coexistence. And I understand and try to figure out ways that there can create this coexistence, even if you're outside the Bible. How we can mutually coexist. They figured it out in Mesa, Tempe, and Scottsdale. Mesa's Mormon, unbelievably conservative. Tempe is very liberal. Scottsdale's in between. They figured out a way to coexist. Truly, to coexist. So, yeah, Mesa worries about what Tempe and Scottsdale are doing and vice versa. And they find these ways to create coexistence. So they have to talk. This is the Association of Mayors. And you have that on the state level. It's not only federal, it's on the county, the Association of Mayors on the county level, and then on the state level. And then you have the Association of County Boards on the state level. Truly. And then between states, the federal level. And so you have this cooperation from local to county to state to federal and federal to state to county to local. And so this creates this great coordination. And so you get this safety because they all know that's the point of Homeland Security. It's just a coordination entity that local law enforcement is talking to county law enforcement, is talking to state law enforcement, who's talking to federal law enforcement. Federal law enforcement is talking to state law enforcement, who's talking to county law enforcement, who's talking to local law enforcement. That's all the Department of Homeland Security does. It's just facilitating exchange of information. And it's also deciding who should have what. A need-to-know basis. Not everything does a local government or county or state need to know. Truly, some things are just about national security, and that's borders outside of them. But some states are on the border, like Texas or California. And so you have to share within that, and they have anti-terrorism and so on the local, county, and state level. And there's offices within them that need to be created to prevent terrorism from crossing the border. And they have to coordinate from the federal to the state to the county to the local. And those are concerns with the border. And then ones away from the border have less concern, but they need to understand about their borders. And so everybody, this is why we started interstate commerce. Interstate commerce. Do you know there's interstate commerce laws that govern commerce between states? And states can have these different interstate commerce laws. Like, say, Texas can ban the import of liquor. Like, certain counties in Texas are dry, and you can't bring liquor into the county. Other counties are wet. But you have to know through Google, I told you, which are wet and which are dry. If you get caught bringing booze into a dry county, you are considered a bootlegger. But then there's exceptions. If you're on the highway and get off to a gas station next to the highway and you're just going through, then you're not a bootlegger. So it's willing to sell, but you can't drink the booze in a dry county. So you can't pop one open and sit on the roadside and have a couple booze. They'll put you in jail in Texas. Oh, they'll lock you up in a heartbeat. But the whole point is, they understand they're wet and dry counties, and people know, but people that are tourists don't. So they need to be informed. And so as the Greyhound buses, they got to stop service. And they can't have people consuming as the Greyhound bus goes through a dry county. And they can't be serving anything but non-alcoholic beverages. And they know when they're coming up, and the Google GPS tells them so they don't violate. Even trains going through a dry county or planes flying over, sorry, that's their airspace, and you can't serve. You say stupidity, I say no, it's not. And so they say, for the next 30 minutes, there'll be no beverage services, only non-alcoholic beverages. Non-alcoholic beverages are allowed all the time. But also, this paces people. Truly, it paces people. Like when you're flying over Saudi Arabia, they can say no beverage services until international waters, meaning no alcoholic beverage services. So what Saudi Arabia must define what they consider non-alcoholic. Is zero non-alcoholic, or is 0.01 non-alcoholic, or is 0.001 non-alcoholic? But they have to, because kombucha, it's a non-alcoholic drink. But because of the fermentation in that, anyone understands fermentation, even kimchi in that, has some alcohol. Truly, fermentation creates alcohol. So it has some remnants of alcohol. So they have to decide what is considered non-alcoholic. And they have to set up the standard. And so, you know, flying over, we can only serve these beverages. But they know, the passengers, it says upcoming, and we can't serve you, 20 minutes until we get into this airspace. And we're flying over Saudi Arabia, and we can no longer serve beverages. And so passenger's last call, and you'll have 20 minutes, and you only sell them a small drink, less than an ounce. Truly, less than an ounce. We used to, at Dirtbags, the reason people didn't get drunk is because we only gave 3/4 of an ounce. Every shot was not an ounce and a half, it was 3/4 of an ounce. We had big bevel glasses and that, but I knew. Customer asked me, yeah, it's only 3/4 of an ounce. We charge accordingly based on 3/4 of an ounce. But the whole point is, it wasn't to get people drunk. So they could do shots, but the shots were really small, and most people ordered mixes. Mixes. So there's even less liquor. Some people ordered straight, like SoCo and that, chilled. 3/4 of an ounce was the maximum, and you can only have so many shots per hour, a man or a woman. So it does matter. Metabolism is faster in younger people. And we're talking bars with younger people, so they have a higher rate of metabolism. So you have to base it, as I showed you, on age and everything. And then you want people to be well hydrated. That's why they used to give soda backs and water backs and that. Truly, old people drink drinks with a back, and usually a water back. Sometimes a soda back, but most old people drink, they have a shot of scotch in a, not a shot glass, in a rocks glass. They have it on ice or neat, meaning without ice, and then they have a water back. A water back. Old people. So they drink a little scotch, they have a sip of that, and then they cleanse it with the water. And it keeps them hydrated. So they have a little bit of booze, a little bit of water, a little bit of booze, a little bit of water. And they're there for not to get drunk, they're there for the socialization, and they're drinking the fine scotch and so on and so forth, and or in general. And so they're there for the conversation, the socialization, but they're still drinking. And then they're watching the game and everything, because old people can't consume as much as young people. I mean, in general, they won't. The metabolism's slower in that. Even if they say in great shape in that, it's in a trend down. But you're going to have, greater by volume, more people in the world, so you make it up. So, again, there's ways to do things to comply. And I try to make it simple that way by sharing these informations. So making it simple for you to follow the rules. And it's very easy to tell a bad person from a good person, because I'm not making it challenging. And if you make it challenging, then I can see people failing, like the Navy SEALs. They make it incredibly challenging, but it has to be. Some things you can't make simple. It has to be unbelievably challenging. But most things I make simple. And so this way, the whole point of like cleaning dishes and that, I figure out ways to clean dishes and make a process and be able to do them simple and quick. And so, but I've been doing them for so long, I kind of tired, of constantly doing them. So anyways, I try to figure out these processes. So a health inspector is saying, okay, how are you sweeping your floors? How are you presenting your food? Maybe you need to present it on a tray, and they eat it on top of a tray. Or like they do at other restaurants, they put the linen and then they put the paper over. And the bottom of the paper is wax, the top is normal paper. The top is normal paper, so it does suck up spills, but the wax prevents it going into the linen. And then they invented the crumber. And so they take the crumber and they remove the crumbs. And then when the guest is gone, they don't have to change the linen. They just pull off the paper. They don't pull it off. They ball it up. They fold it from the outsides, the corners, inward. And they put it in a ball. Truly, they fold it inward to catch the crumbs and all the food particles. And then they throw it in. And it can go down the side. So the outside, the linen's showing, but on the sides, you got the paper cover maybe. So when they go up against the table, the wax prevents them from contaminating the linen. So when they pull in, they're not contaminating the linen. But you still have the very nice linen, and they can see it from the sides. And if you want, you can make it transparent. There's transparent paper and transparent wax. So the bottom side is wax, and it sticks, so it doesn't slip. The wax makes it non-slip. And so the paper can suck up the spill, and they can still see the beautiful linen. Some places do glass. And instead, they put the beautiful linen, then they put a piece of glass on top. And then, they use other things like coasters and other things. So there's several ways to go about it, but you're making it really easy to turn tables and really easy to apply with health code. And that's what I did. I studied my employees, I studied everything, and I put things together to make it easy for people to follow the rules. Teaching people to fold napkins, and then teaching them how to fold them more efficiently. Like put your utensils here, 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 here. Your napkins here, here, here. And then you can fold them, and you're really done quickly with your side work. So I would teach them how to do side work very quickly. Not horribly, complying 100%. But I knew the really bad people because I made it really simple. And if you can't do it and I'm making it really simple, then maybe it's not for you because you're not inspired. At least you have to have some type of enthusiasm, some type of optimism, some type of wanting to be there. And it might be just because the tips are good. I don't care. It could be just because the tips are good. That's fine with me. That's a legitimate motivation. But you're not throwing people under the bus for money. That's an illegitimate motivation. So I was looking, people were motivated. Like I worked at Charlie's, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we make $500 a night in tips. Truly, we were slammed and those were my bar shifts, and I was the bar manager. I managed to close and after close, but I was also working behind the bar with them. I was a working manager, like Michael Jordan when he went to the Philadelphia 76ers. He was a player coach. He played and he coached. He got paid for both. In some games he played more, in some games he coached more. But he got paid for both positions as a player coach. It's a transition into coaching. Now, I don't know why he didn't finish the transition, because it would have been cool if Michael Jordan stayed in the NBA and was a coaching on a team. Truly. And he stayed connected, or he could have went into mentoring. And he mentors the players. That's why I love Brandon Marshall from the Bears. And I was upset when the Bears traded him. Brandon Marshall mentored Jeffries. Brandon Marshall had mental health issues. He overcame them. He did. And he was a very straight guy. And he mentored James Jeffrey, and he became outstanding, and he showed them the ropes, and he said that we need more of this in the NFL, that the older players have to mentor the younger players on proper conduct and everything, going out with them, hanging out with them, and showing them the ropes. Just like in college, the older players need to mentor the younger players, and they hang out with them, and if they step out of line, the senior players have to, but you have to have good people. Because if your garbage is at the top, then the bottom's in the beat of garbage. And the Bible talks about that. That's why older people are supposed to be better. And David used to talk about that. Older people need to mature and become better. I'm not supposed to be worse. I'm supposed to be unbelievably ethical. And other older people are supposed to move my way of incredibly ethical. So we can mentor the younger people, as I showed you with criminal activity. They're more loose cannons. Older people, they don't commit crimes. There is, like, in the United States, you can get a few older people, a few, not even 100, that might commit some crimes. If they've ever done, it could be financial. But Bernie Madoff was doing it all the way along. I'm talking about new crimes. Some serial killers even stopped, like the guy in California, because they aged out. They didn't have the body, the strength. They couldn't do it anymore. But it doesn't mean they're not a serial killer. They just aged out. So I'm not supposed to be wicked. I'm supposed to be incredibly moral. But it seems like you want to make me incredibly wicked. It's not going to happen. But here's the Chinese church. And we were talking about the elder congregation with Betsy and trying to mentor them and make their marriages better. Make their marriages better. She called upon me originally, not David, me. I got introduced through David, but she called upon me. And then I invited David along. She didn't invite David. She invited me to go to the marital congregation dinner. It was just for the older married couples. And it was me. I was a single guy, but Betsy wanted me there talking about mentoring the older couples in the Chinese church. And so she wanted me there. And some reason, truly, she considered me the person to talk about intermarriage relationships, but heterosexual. There wasn't any alternative lifestyle. They were all heterosexual, and they ran the bank, and they ran all this stuff, and she was trying to figure out how to make relationships better between husband and wife. And she turned to me. This is prior to 2016. And she turned to me, just like my friend Linda, her church. She turned to me about how to deal with the pastor. And then I had my friend Jimmy with his pastor and many others, and how to mentor them and how to better the congregation and so on. And these people were naturally turning to me and asking me how to improve their congregations, from Hillsong to many others. How do we improve our church? And so they were naturally turning to me, asking me, how can we mentor better? How can we improve our church? How can we become more godly? Now, none of them knew each other. And none of them, I didn't even put it together. I never put it together until later. But all these people were coming to me, and they were turning to me to tell them how to mentor their church, their whole congregations. How can you improve our church? And so they were doing that. And then on the backside, David kind of cut me out of the conversation with Betsy somewhere 2016. But I ate with her at a Chinese restaurant that was violating health code, making dumplings. The guys were smoking in that. And I should have left, but if I leave, then I couldn't spend time with her. So I wanted to spend time with her. And she said she was going to invite me down to the Chinese church to attend service and everything, but I never got an invitation. But she was going to invite me to the Chinese church to go to service and start attending the Chinese church in Chinatown. That's what she said the last time we met. That I'll, give you an invitation. You can come down and, attend service and hang out with the congregation and, So that's what she planned. Her husband, she's into computers. She's a genius in technology. She's an American through and through, and she is highly ethical, and she's a genius at computer programming technology. And her husband owns multiple medical practices, and he's a doctor. and very good at what he does. And we talked about changing the practices and how to stabilize and change doctors and so on and so forth. And that was just natural conversation. And she was helping me, truly helping me, try to get her husband as my client. She was already my client. She wanted to meet her husband, and I met him at the Chinese dinner that we did at Mingham's on the second floor. I met her husband, and she wanted me to get closer and closer to him. One, the mentor. Number two, that she also mentioned that the business. But I was there first and foremost as a friend. I'm her friend. Without or with the business, I was her friend. And so she wanted me to do. I didn't ask. And I had all these people asking me independently. Now, you figure that out. Why are they so drawn to me to tell them how to run their churches and how their congregations should act and what is appropriate in God's eyes? So, you tell me why all these people, all these years, turned to me. And I had black people, same thing. My one client, she was in a dye, and she wanted me to go into the black churches, talk financial literacy, talk spirituality. And God rest her soul, Brenda. I loved that girl. She died of cancer. If I would have known sooner, but I didn't find out sooner. But she took care of her elders. She left a good death benefit. But we missed it at Hancock. She got a standard rating, a decent rating. We didn't see the cancer. And I don't know if it was a very form of aggressive cancer. I don't know. I never was able to do this, but me going into the black churches ended. And then I had another pastor. I mean, she was a praise minister. And then I had another black pastor that wanted me to come in and do the same. And he had diabetes. And I took over his health plan to help him with his diabetes. And I was having problems motivating him to get his blood checked and other things. And I'd be on the phone all the time with him, trying to figure out how I can get him to go to the doctors, how I can get him to, take care of his diabetes. He had type 2 diabetes. He had a young wife. She was a beautiful young black girl. And it seemed like they had a great marriage. But he wasn't doing things, and I would call him up all the time and ask him, did you go to the doctor? And so on. Did you get your blood work checked? And so on. And let me look at, I took over the benefits. And I said, I'll take over, sign this letter. I'll take over your benefits. I'll look at them and then figure out how we can get these things covered. So I went through his benefit plan and I said, now you can go to the doctors and basically almost nothing out of pocket. I redid his his life insurance. Yeah, I restructured his life insurance policy. And so this way the cash value would grow faster and the death benefit and cash value would grow faster. So I restructured his life policy. But I was having a hard time motivating him. And it all got thrown south when all the bad things happened to me. And so I stopped trying to assist these people as I was trying to help myself. But all these bad things came, and those people, I don't know where they ended. Truly, I don't know where these clients ended. Like Ron, he was really stubborn, and I had to get him to go in for checking and for his cancer, and many others. And they found it, and they cured it, and so on. But these are male clients. I did the same for my female clients. So, but all that stuff stopped. And so you think I wasn't doing all this stuff. I met with two sisters, and I told Jason, my friend, Jason Hill, in New York. He said, I met with these people and they don't have, and so on. I said, okay, you restructured the policy in that, but here's other things you can do for them to help them. Here's temporary services. Here's job training. Here's this. Here's that. And I said, you're going there and make them a future client. Right now, you got to give. And this is talking to Jason Hill. Me and him got along great. I didn't talk to his brother as much, me and him. And I said, you can do X, Y, Z for them. And I need you to restructure your practice. Restructure your practice. And these will be your future clients. But you got to give now. And I said, you can do this, structure your book A, B, C. And these are junior agents, and you mentor them, and they learn. And they can build them up. In the future, these clients grow, and they turn C clients into B clients, and they come their A clients in the future. So they eventually grow into the building, and you give them your C and D clients. But you teach them how to mentor, how to help the clients to grow them into, from D to C, from C to B, at least to move up a level. And so you help mentor them, and so they can build their book of business. So they're not thinking, wow, I'm dealing with all this. So you misunderstand what I talk about. I do believe in giving people an opportunity. And I do, in the future, they can grow into these things. And that's a part of life. And that's what reading the Bible and God knows you mature. And you keep on maturing until you die. And you're supposed to be moving more towards God as you age. And so you're, young and you go with your parents and so on. And like Pastor Peter, he didn't go into ministry. He went into praise, and he kind of found his own path and kind of stepped away somewhat and so on. And understand, you step out and you're doing your things, and then eventually there's this progression, and you get a girlfriend and I'm talking from a guy's perspective, and they become, a fiance and a wife and kids, and then it starts mattering more. And so there's this whole time where you're going because you love your parents and they're mentoring you, and then eventually you start moving away on your own, and then the boomerang, and you start coming back, and those things start mattering more. So there's a time where you step away in life, and there's a time where you come more to embrace. And so there's this natural process of life. And it teaches you that in the Bible. With Jesus, he didn't start his ministry at 33. And yes, he did some things when he was younger in that, but he was learning carpentry, hanging out with his friends, doing what kids do. He had very great parents, and he was playing and doing lots of things and being a kid. He was still a much more responsible kid than anyone, but still, he was a child, and he experienced those things. And he got to step away and play. Just like I told you with all my work and things, I played baseball and, I did a lot of things that children do. And so there's this progression. And so then you grow older and you step away, and I stepped away from the church for a while. But now I'm older and it's become more important, but the church has stepped away from me. So it's in reverse. I was supposed to be with Jen. I was supposed to be married and with kids and moving through this natural life progression. And that's what was supposed to happen. And so I was supposed to move through this natural process, and all God wanted was this natural process for me. And you stripped away all of that. This natural process, and then you wanted to pervert it. And I don't think that sits very well with him. Here, a pediatrician. You've got this. And she's talking to the doctor. You've got this. We're looking at it. Okay, you need to, as he's listening to the heart, he's thinking, okay, maybe we need to set up an exercise regimen and so on. So he talks to the parents. He's like, how does she play? Is it more sedentary? Oh, okay. So we need to incorporate more physical activity into her exercises. So instead of painting sitting down, have her stand up to paint. And then have her paint on canvases and use more wider brush strokes. Don't get a little canvas, get a big canvas. And tell her you want to paint bigger pictures. Make a bigger face in that. Paint a bigger mountain so she takes more wider brush strokes. More wider brush strokes. She doesn't know. She thinks, oh, wow, this is fun. And she's doing the wax on, wax off, right? Karate Kid. But taking broader strokes. But doing it in another way. He was giving Ralph Macchio, who didn't do much physical activity. He was a very weak kid, latchkey. His mom was working. He wasn't engaged in the physical activity. The other kids, highly physically active and so on. So he needed to strengthen him. Part of washing the cars and doing all that was to build muscle too. And coordination and many other things. Like me holding the camera phone. To build coordination and everything else. Here, find your company up to 35% in energy savings. ComEd.com.biz. And as they grow, they'll eventually spend 35% more. So you're giving today the seed that will grow their future growth. And so eventually you'll get the 35% back in righteousness. So you give today to receive tomorrow. And if you're structuring everything right, their operation cost goes down and then they expand and it stays down, but they have more operations and you get more money, just like high rises. We had these shorter buildings and now we have those much taller buildings. And so much more consumed by the taller building than the shorter building. So they gave to get. That's how it works. And that's why humbling yourself before God. You got to give before you receive. I told you about my life. I gave before I ever received. You don't receive before you give. No one. Mary had to give before she received. Jesus had to give before he received. You don't get it the other way around. Just like a bum, they have to give, meaning they have to go in, they have to start doing certain things, and that's giving. That means they're focusing and cleaning up and doing certain things to move themselves. And they have to give before they receive. So that's how it works. Just like going into therapy. You got to go to receive. Sometimes the therapist comes to you, but you still have to open up. So you have to give to receive. Serve and protect. They have to give before they receive. That's why your earnings are in the rear. They don't pay you before you work. They pay you after you work. You have to give before you receive. So the paycheck is on the back end. Sometimes they pay you daily, but that's at the end of the day. You can take out a loan, but they charge you interest. If you wanted it up front, like a mortgage, you're taking money up front. You got to pay interest. But on the back end, escrow, they give you interest. It sits there and then it closes and then they give the money, but you earn interest in escrow. But you had to give the money first. So you had to give to receive. And this is how I told you, how I'm supposed to receive first. But all I've been doing is giving and never receiving. So then you'll be put to waste. You'll be put to waste. Because It's an upside down cross. You have to humble yourself to God first before you can receive. And look at the Bible. Choosing Jesus, coming to Jesus, and so on and so forth. You have to give before you receive. And that's not happening in my life. And you will be condemned. And that's the opposite is happening. It was supposed to pour and rain in good things for me. Blessings were supposed to rain upon me. Not vice versa. You were supposed to rain upon me, not me raining upon you. So you have to give to receive. It's not that I won't stop doing blessings, but the whole point is you got to start giving. And so you're created Satan. You think you can receive without giving. That is untrue. And anyone that tells you, that's why you had offering at church. Giving to receive. Now, I wanted to do it a different way, where you do volunteer services and other things, but you're still giving, like paying into a health insurance account. You have to give and then you receive, or an investment account, or Social Security, 10 years of work. You have to give before you receive. Unemployment, you have to pay into unemployment. You must give before you receive. I paid sales tax as a child. I gave. You have to give before you receive. Truly. So we give a period of neutral baptism when the child doesn't know. But once the child becomes in the knowledge, it has to give to receive. And that's why it talks about respecting your elders in the Bible. And the child has to do their chores and do their homework and everything. They have to give before they receive. Researching your new crush. We're not that interested. Well, I'm interested. I need a girl. But the whole point is researching. You got to give before you receive. So you see how this works? Like the earth, God had to give, as it told you in the Bible, for you to receive. So God gave. And then with Jesus, he gave. Now he's supposed to receive. And I'm supposed to be receiving those blessings. So again, you're in a very bad place, and it seems to be getting worse. So if you're not giving, you will be condemned. And so organ transplants, and I told you, you have to give before you receive. I was mad about Mickey Mantle. He didn't deserve. He cut the list. That's not how it works. You got to give before you receive. And if you don't give, like prisoners, then they don't receive. And they go into hospice and they pass away like Charles Manson, but they get, hospice care. But they didn't give. So they don't receive. So their life ends. That was their choice. You're not supposed to save them. You can make them comfortable and ease their pain, but they're going to pass. That was their choice. They didn't give, they decided to take. They didn't earn, they decided to steal.